discussion. Just thinking about how I think it's my wife is actually on a Brexit march today with her son. She went there with some friends and she planned for a while. And obviously it's politically pertinent but also personally pertinent. So it's a quite interesting subject. I think artists have dealt with it over the entire history of humanity making objects, really. It's probably one of those things that starts with a stone tool. You pick up what's around you or a piece of wood. So I think there's quite a long view, and there's short view of details, how do you manage studios, all this kind of thing. So I think there's kind of quite a broad range today that we can delve into, from the more philosophical and kind of long, like I said, the long view of it. But I think also it's worth, I think it would be nice to start with, possibly if we could, maybe, because I know I've come up against it, maybe an anecdote each, a short anecdote about something you've overcome, or worked around or solved that you weren't quite expecting, but actually led to maybe a positive outcome in the practice. If you need a second for thinking about it, I can start with one really quickly.
You start, but I can start.
Because I think it's worth reflecting on, what becomes of the limited resource, or how you can make this a positive thing. And probably one of my biggest ones is, I arrived at Goldsmiths as a sculptor and a video artist, so I was making performances with objects, and then I was making films about them. Kind of Matthew Byrne-esque, a classic, what I call young male performance endurance stuff. Climbing equipment, kind of all that coming right there, some climbing holds. So I was in that world a little bit of that. It's like young male navel gazing, I might say. I arrived at Goldsmiths and they said, right, the metal shop, you can't touch any equipment. And I was used to building everything myself in the States. Wood shop was on strike. And it was a 9-month course, called it a year, it was 9 months. And I just, what? I panicked because I knew time was going to go so fast. So I put a huge sheet of paper on the wall and started drawing what I would build. I thought, fine, can't do the welding today or make the woodwork or whatever, I'll draw. Because that takes a pen and paper, that's some paper. Put a huge sheet of paper up, about as high as that wall, about 16 feet wide. Actually, I did it after a few weeks, but anyway, I put this big sheet of paper up. And I left it for a while, but I did start drawing on it. And that slowly then, I drew these just line drawings of things, quite perspectival things, and then started gluing onto it. And fast forward a year, and I suddenly was making these giant collages, which I never thought I'd be doing at Goldsmiths. And I left as a kind of collage painter artist with a practice that had some kind of traction on it, and that actually started my career. So what I arrived to do, I kind of knew I was going to change, but the workshop, the lack of resources, forced me into a new methodology of making work that I wouldn't have even thought I would do. So in terms of turning something that was really a constraint into an asset, that was probably, in terms of my experience, one of the most relevant ones. And had unexpected results. So I guess that for me, that was that resource becoming, the limit becoming the key to open something. And I don't know about you, if yours is education, it probably is.
It is.
Yeah. Has to do with me? Is there a me?
No, you were definitely
Yeah, that's true.
No, you weren't a limitation. No, it was about the residency and how that all evolved, really, which we had looked at different options whilst doing the masters and different ways of being able to maintain and sustain the practice. Having gone to a talk by somebody from Art Map London, and she had invited Paul Bailey from the Florence Trust, and essentially knowing how competitive the art world is and how competitive it is to get on residencies, one of the key things that he said was, well, if you can't get on, well, make one yourself. So that kind of stuck with me, and the limited resource was trying to find a location where we might be able to hold a residency, and that's really how that residency evolved. But working on a construction site, 2 floors under with no light, and it's not a proper studio. Before you actually go onto the site, you have to do the health and safety induction.
The whole thing.
And it's not a proper, whatever a proper artist working environment is, not the norm. And so that's really how this whole show has evolved from 2017 year, and how the different artists have responded. I mean, some literally taking elements of materials that they've identified as something they would be really interested to work with from the construction side.
Yeah. So in your case, turning again the lack of something, doing it yourself, but then possibly that strange environment that arose creates another situation for new ideas.
Yes, well certainly for my practice it's changed it immensely. I mean, I never really sort of thought I would be going through like this as well.
Well, it's not too surprising. What about you, Sam?
I don't think I've got any specific anecdotes other than whenever I've been constrained in terms of resources, spaces, it's always been to my benefit. And I think back to, it's another Goldsmith story, they sort of start to sound like war stories, sort of PTSD, but I do remember, as you do, you get put through the critical grinder, and there was a sense that everything had been reduced to, you could say, rubble, but there wasn't. I remember being in the studio and just working with drawings for a long time, and it uncomplicated them. In the essence, the paintings that I ended up making at the end of the MA were they were very simple. They were just monochrome paintings done, and I didn't even use brushes. I used tissue and cotton buds and things like that. So it was almost like decluttering, taking away the paraphernalia. I still recommend this as well. Sometimes when talking to students, the idea of getting too precious over stuff, that you become too, you feel like there's a set of criteria that have to be met, and it could be like quality of paint you're using, a certain type of brush, and actually sometimes just working with what you've got.
So in a way you're talking about also switching the view from seeing artwork as a resource, i.e. like an income, and being precious about it, to switching the sense of the limited resource as viewing it almost not so much as a resource to be mined that you must, you should treat it more, what's the word for it? You should treat it more aggressively, loosely, less preciously.
Exactly, yeah. I
think the way of treating the resource as being limited is the
I think sometimes that when people work on really expensive canvas and lint, it ruins them.
Yeah, they get very
a crummy piece of cotton duck, and they do some really good stuff.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah, there's certainly something about how when you are confronted with those precious materials, you tighten up, can tighten up, you can make you. Yeah, that's great. And you had an off-site studio, you were part-time, so, because I was the on-site studio, so it was that. It was quite a difference as well.
Yeah, my studio then is now the Olympic Stadium.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a big studio.
Resource. It's a big studio, and there's a whole other story.
The cyclists are really annoying though, keep whizzing around. How about yourself, either of you?
I was thinking about how, so Liz and I do a lot of collaborative projects, and so everything we want to do requires space. And we don't have any money, so we have to go around and ask people for space. So we've done 2 exhibitions in a gallery that wasn't yet renovated, just by screwing up the courage to go and ask for it, and then finding people say yes. And then it's funny how when you have an idea and then you have to go and look for resources that won't cost very much money or anything, it affects how the projects come off in a really exciting, challenging way, because then you're working in a gallery space that doesn't have proper electricity, you're daisy chaining cords up 5 floors of space, you're doing all sorts of, there's no heat, the walls are falling apart, there's holes in the floor, but it all makes it all better in the end. So think of that, and in the discussion group we did, where we just had to go and ask for space to get people together and have conversations about painting. And I'm always surprised by how quickly people are willing to say yes and pitch in, and then that makes it all better for us as well.
And it's amazing working and just thinking, actually the best holidays I've had have actually been somewhere they lost my luggage. And in fact, the holiday where I met my husband was one of those holidays. And I was with a group of people, and everybody had to lend me stuff. I mean, well, they didn't have to, but they chose to lend me stuff. And I had a great time. And eventually my luggage turned up, and I thought, what do I want all that stuff for? I don't need it.
That's a very good point, yeah.
It's sometimes when things are simplified, that stuff is really helpful. I mean, actually, I have a long time to think about this now as we've sort of gone down the line. And in my art practice, obviously I'm quite vertically challenged. I'm only 5'2", and I make really big work, and I have to go quite high to hang it. But I don't really like to use things like scaffolding and so on. So just using simple things like a knob pole, a big stick, it's amazing how high you can get it and how much you can do just with very, very simple things. So that's become part of my practice, trying to keep things very simple and light, not needing a massive van. I've just used my recycling box to send some work somewhere and 6 weeks of painting into a recycling box, which feels nice. It feels like it just simplifies things.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, you mentioned, on the one hand, you're talking about materials, but Rebecca also mentioned something I was interested in discussing, is one of the limited resources is conversations, postgraduate school, post-MA, post-BA, whatever you've just done. It's probably the most intense discussions about art you're going to have. And then there's that thing of it just drops to silence. I was sort of surprised going to the studio after graduating. So is that also one of, I mean, that's part of the reason you organized the residency, was that's a resource as well, discussion,
Absolutely,
conversation,
I think it's
and what you were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the beauty of it is that having now going into its 3rd edition, one learns from year to year how important that whole talking and bringing in people that have got the same sort of viewpoints but different practices and seeing it from different sides, and so pooling resources, pooling skill sets and understanding that there are different ways of looking and different ways of reaching out with your work.
Yeah, I think also the things that your friends tell you when you're working in a more intense way, like on a residency or things. But when you do those one-off studio visits, sometimes the tendency is the whole thing disappears, kind of getting to know the work and being a bit too kind. But when you've worked together for a month in a space, sometimes that need to sort of do the polite thing, and the honesty comes out, doesn't it? So those things come up. And then in terms of the material side, I mean, I know a few artists over the years that I've read about, or even a friend of mine whose studio was destroyed, one in a fire, and another one was a building just literally became condemned in Los Angeles, and they came in and said no one can go back in, and they trashed everything inside. It was a bit of a property thing going on there. Anyway, it's a long story. But they all actually in the end found it extremely liberating. I don't know what you guys feel, but I'm watching my studio filled with things that I should probably throw out, get rid of. How do we manage that? Or is anyone really mercenary about it? Is anyone very good at that?
I am sometimes, but that comes from my background. I'm good at accumulating stuff, but there's a point
where you a waste manager? What were you? Were you in waste
management? My family history.
Okay.
So my family history, that my parents left Hungary with nothing.
Yes.
And when they arrived here, they kept everything. And so it's like when I had to empty their house, it was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't leave that legacy for my children. But because I knew that that was what they were like you kick out sometimes against what you're brought up with. And I find it really cathartic getting rid of stuff. And I also find it, if I go into my studio and I've been working and it's become, a little bit messy, it's like, no, I've got to clear it, I've got to get rid of that, because it's like my head.
Yeah.
Go.
What are you a hoarder or a thinner?
I think we're all hoarders, aren't we, as artists? To a certain extent, we're inquisitive, and we kind of, and I'm as guilty as anyone, but after a while, you get the stalactites of stuff. But again, that was, you have to grasp at that point where you've collected so much stuff that I remember doing a lot of, this is strange, isn't it? That there was an era where, when I was collecting images, it was all paper-based. It was, it was photocopies, things I ripped out on paper. And I just ended up with thousands of files everywhere. And partly because I realised it's so much more efficient to just get these images online and print off when you need them. Yeah. I just went through mass and just went through all of this junk one day. It took me a very long time. And in the end, just thought, there's not really any reason to just put all of it in recycling. And it's an interesting feeling when you do. I think as an artist, there is something about that. Maybe it's like Frank Auerbach, sort of strip it down and then try it again to create it fresh. But it does help. Yeah, I think that idea of just get rid of stuff before you're starting it and then reinvent it is good.
And it sounds, because of your temporary spaces and temporary installations for both of you, how does that work?
Well, lately, I've started having several steps to how I weave through my stuff. First, if I'm working on canvas and it's an old piece, I'll take it off the canvas, roll it up, put it in tube. Later on, I'll look at it again and I'll think, okay, do I really want to keep that or not? And then that's when I really start getting rid of stuff. I'm like, okay, I don't need to keep all of these. And that kind of keeps the stuff on canvas going. And then now working on paper, it's quite easy I can take a whole room, roll it up and put it in a giant tube, and I've got a whole room in there, and I can tuck it under my arm, walk somewhere else and put it in again. So that's the moment I'm at right now, so I'm really enjoying that. I can make something so massive and it fits into a tube.
And do you have a room full of stuff that supports that?
No, not so much. Now we have a couple of rooms and tubes in the studio now, but that's probably because I've been working that way for the last year and a half. Talk to me in a few years, I might have whole houses that have rooms.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, there's a cultural acceptance and or stereotype, let's say, that we are hoarders by nature. Obviously everything we produce is supposed to be an enigmatic part of our creative production, and it's supposed to be valuable. There's a value thing. So I'm kind of curious about that point at which in artist production, there's some nexus where the volume and the value meet, and they start to then erode each other. And I don't know where that point is, and how, sometimes it's to do with the quality of the work, but like my son makes endless amounts of, he's the most productive person in the family. But I can't work out if he values these things. I keep every single one of them, I haven't thrown any of them out, maybe 2 have been lost. So the stacks are growing. And my mom got them all out and started looking at them. And then I realized that he got really excited. And my mom asked if she could have 1 or 2, and he was like, no, those are mine. I made them. I like them. And I thought, oh my God, it's 9. And he's hoarding them, right? His whole So I slightly, I guess, thought, oh, he's young, freedom, art is freedom, he's free, he's not going to want to keep these things. But no, he was exhibiting that same, this is my production.
Yeah.
So how do you guys manage that? Where does that balance? It would be great to throw it all out with it as well. It would be really, really nice, actually. So where do we tip that? Is that a question of freedom, or is that a question of value? How does that work? How do you guys think that works?
My packs are pretty small, so I'm quite, and again, I think that's part of the practice now.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely a natural hoarder. I look at an object and it just seems to say, it makes nothing with me. I can't bear to throw it away. And luckily I'm married to a neat freak. Otherwise I would just be buried.
Yeah.
So once a year I actually let the neat freak into the studio.
Oh,
You do? A bit of a tidy up. Yeah.
Wow.
He's like, that's
Great.
I could help you here.
I could so
I just grit my teeth and it's really hot. And I just, okay. And it helps a lot actually.
So you have an editor?
I do,
Yeah.
yes. Well, it doesn't edit the work, but it
No.
kind of edits the space
Stuff
around
around.
Yeah, the space around me.
Yeah.
Do you ever go out and say, oh.
Yeah, I stand by the door actually. Well, something else.
gotten rid of, or any of us have gotten rid of, but in your case, is that something that your mind, the experience, the importance, the meaning, the information from that object is stored, and it's okay, you no longer need it? Like, that's another thing, is like, I look at art books, artist monographs I have, and I'm not that interested in it.
Yeah.
Is it a bit like that? You've moved, but it's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it helps to go over it. I think you were talking about going over old work. I find that really a good thing to do. So maybe if I don't have the opportunity to go over it, I can't sort of unlock that potential again once it's in the scale. But I'll be kind of little look.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. I mean, I found keeping small journals, but no images, just things I was thinking and doing, but it'll have what I call paint mixed in with, and I have the little moleskin ones, tiny ones, and I'll just pick those up. It's a half of a diary, half of an idea, but I'm triggered partly by what I was doing, where I was. It's almost more of a memory mapping, but then I remember ideas. It's amazing the liquidity of ideas and how you'll have a brilliant idea and you forget it the next day.
Yeah.
So that's
I
also...
love going back through my notebooks for those reasons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a great idea.
So I think in terms of the resource of this, which is ultimately all, we can have tools, materials, those can burn up in a fire, but that we walk out the door with, it's still there. How do you guys manage that as a resource? How do you manage the limited stroke, immense power of that thing? It's kind of both, isn't it?
It's through technology as well, the storing of the cloud.
Is the cloud helping you there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't. Because actually that's probably what needs cleaning up the most.
Yeah.
But it does help, and the technology helps you itself, because my Mac is now telling me it's full. And I have to buy space on the cloud, and I won't buy the space. So we've actually got to do something about it.
Or it dies.
Yeah.
Yes, when it dies.
I know, I was really fascinated by the artist Ryan Gander. He had a studio down the road. I was in an arch and he was a couple of archways down. And his practice, he has a disability, so he's in a wheelchair, so he was never really a heavy maker himself. He spent a lot of his time in hospital thinking about art and finally got out and was able to start producing. But he text messaged himself his ideas, and then they get printed out on A4 sheets. And one whole wall of the studio was A4 sheets. Quite large text, each idea summated in just a few words. And then he had assistants, and obviously he's with Listen Gallery, so he has the resources, but his assistants would then help him or get these things made. But it was just this wall. What was deeply fascinating was this wall of potential. I mean, it made me cry at my own inadequacy. Because he looked at it and went, that'd be my whole lifetime, and he couldn't have done that in a week. But I don't know how he cataloged those. I never got a chance to ask him how he operated on that. But I thought it was a very clean, this was pre-cloud. And I think those kind of, the way we manage an archive of ideas, of the brain resource, as a limited attention span, you can figure out ideas. That is scary. You guys have any quirky, you use the cloud. I don't really have a great way, but books.
But
I have these little moleskin books, but I don't use them daily. It's not really
I think that idea of forgetting, I just can't believe how much I forget from one day to the studio to the next. And in some ways, the most revolutionary thing, but in some ways the worst thing is smartphone technology, being able to take a photo, a very good photo in the studio, and then take that home. And it's weird how that affects the whole psychology, the idea of that moment of letting things settle. I quite like that.
And not looking at them or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly being able to live with them all the time. So you get home and sort of start thinking about a passage that you weren't pleased with, or something you got wrong, and you really stew on it. And it can sometimes have good effects because you can put it right. But there was something to be said about that. The limits of my own memory, because it's a haptic kind of activity. I can't remember how, and I don't think it's like pathological. I don't think there's something wrong with me. It's just that I can't remember how I did things. That it won't, and that's really interesting. I think that my practice revolves around painting and drawing, and I think that's the compulsion to keep doing it, is to, there are bits that just are kind of not there, that they aren't there as a resource. The resource is this kind of engagement with ideas, materials, and how that process works, and the fallibility of memory and the brain. So in that sense, the lack of the resource there is, for me, I think if I did remember it, I think I'd stop painting.
Yeah, I totally agree in the sense that looking away took me a long time to realise holidays and luggage. Holidays were good, too much luggage was bad, but the holidays are just wham time away. Time not looking at the resource. And you're right, the digital, the tendency to push these things up to all of the social media platforms and all of that has changed the way we view those resources as well, and what they mean. And I also thought there was I read another great thing, which if you guys have anything similar, I remember reading Hans Ulrich Obrist, the most exhausting man in the art world. He has a 4 in the morning club, where you meet at 4 in the morning to discuss ideas.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, guys.
Popular, is it?
I find it's just, he is the megalomaniac Superman of the art world. He flies every weekend to do an artist studio visit. I don't think he has anybody else in his life. He wants part of his life. But he said, which I thought was great, is he said he goes to all these artist studios every weekend and sees more art than any human being on earth. But he said, one thing I ask every artist is, what are the projects you haven't realized? He said, the one question I ask every single one, tell me your dream projects, the things you haven't been able to do. And he said, from that, I can tell more about how interesting, ambitious, or kind of engaged that artist. It's more so than what they've actually made, it's what they haven't been able to make. I don't know if you feel, I got scared because I was like, oh no, I don't have the dream wall again, I don't have the big, what haven't I made, and I don't know if anyone's thought about that or has anything to say about that, or if there are projects the dream projects that are in the back. Do you think that way? I don't necessarily think that way.
I don't really think that way. I do have things I'd like to realize, and so it's kind of a weird position to be in now because I got to do one in Florence Trust. So I got to make my painting a freestanding space that you could walk into and walk around, and it was 4.5 inches high, and it was just this huge room, and I loved watching people interact with it. They would lay on the floor, they would sit around and talk, they'd bring their kids in, someone brought their dog in, took loads of selfies with their dog, and I loved watching people interact and having it relate to the space as well. So now it's kind of a funny position to be in because I got to do something that I've really wanted to do for a while. And now it's done. So it feels a bit funny. Now it's in the tube in the studio.
In the tube.
In the tube. But I don't really think, I'm always on to like the next thing. I don't think I have one big, huge project.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a funny moment when you do get to do something you thought, oh, I'd really like to get a chance to take the painting off the wall and make it something else.
I think what I realized also, maybe you guys have something to say about this in terms of, I realized when I was younger, you had, I will go to this college one day, or I will. When you're younger, there's goals life has set for you that seem appropriate or natural, whatever. Or maybe I'll be in this art prize or something. But post with art, with just your own little studio, and I think that the idea of the imaginary space of things you haven't done yet, being a way to generate excitement in the studio, I kind of missed that, and I feel like I should do that more. I don't know about you guys, where having a project that you can't even fathom right now.
Yeah.
I feel like what I'm saying is when Ulrich Obrist brought that up, I thought, wow, I probably should do that because it would help. I remember the things I got in my life having this big dream. I took the small steps along the way, and other things came up. And I think maybe that limited resource. One thing we forget is that long view. I don't know about you guys. Like
I think one thing I'm finding really useful, actually, I'm putting more and more line on my phone, and I have notes to my phone, and I do write down projects. No, I don't look at it that often. I might understand it and review it that often, but it kind of frees up the mind that you were talking about, the the capacity of the mind. And I was listening to Norman Ackroyd talking to Robert Bartholomew the other day on Radio 4, and he said the time when he gets his best ideas is 4 in the morning. As he's waking up, and I totally agree with that. It's like your mind has been emptied. So that time when you've actually got the capacity, you come up with your ideas. I think the best ideas I've had have been sort of 4 in the morning, more successful ones. So writing it down and putting it on my phone and just handing it over to the phone. I mean, if I lose the phone, it's a bit of a mess. But I don't know actually.
I'm sure it is.
Right, so you need some tech help after this.
Yeah.
I mean, there actually is capacity, there is storage capacity. So there are massive servers somewhere in the world, heating up the environment to look after all our notes and our photos that we've discarded. We think they've just disappeared, but they haven't. But yeah, I just really agreed with that idea of freeing up your mind by dumping the capacity, dumping the memories and the thoughts somewhere else.
Do you think that's been the history of art making cultures as a capacitor of the human mind? Like store that, lock it down, mythologize it.
Well, by making the work, it's embedded.
It's doing
in the
that.
work. No, I haven't thought about that.
Like it's a sort of okay, next. I mean, it feels
and
like
those thoughts are passed on to somebody else by looking at the work.
I sort of feel that resource side of it is the artwork is kind of capacitor dump, kind of electric discharge into another form of an idea to a thing.
And what's kind of interesting is this is the first period of time where we're all talking about using technology for notes, and everybody's taking pictures of everything, and everything's going off into a cloud. So what is this digital archive or footprint we're going to leave behind? Previously, we would have been looking at people's notes, or their sketches, or their notes to themselves, things they collected, objects that they found interesting. 100 years from now, how do they look at what we were looking at, or we were collecting, or we were seeing? I used to cover my studio in notes to myself, quotes I collected, collect objects, take pictures, print it, put it on the wall. And then a couple of years ago, I stopped doing all that, and everything became on my phone. And I'm going back to, I go everywhere with Moleskin now, I'm going back to writing down ideas, I tear out the pages, I put it up on the wall in the studio, and I'm going back to that again. Because I was finding when I go into the studio, I would think, oh, what was I thinking of yesterday, or what am I doing next, or what's kind of percolating around in my head, and then I would take out my phone to remind myself or to think about it, what I had photographed the weekend before, or something that I thought was really interesting, and then you get sucked into your phone, and then you're sucked into the next thing, and the next thing, and my kids start texting me, or my husband calls, and then all of a sudden I look up and realize, I spent like 40 minutes sitting here on this thing, so I've stopped doing that now.
Well, and you just brought up another limited resource, which is called attention.
In time.
Attention is the currency of attention is what there's a new. They refer to Instagram, Facebook, but just media in general now as the currency of attention. There's a whole market, a whole economy around our attention.
Yeah.
And I find you're right. You can slip quite quickly with
It's
the technology into the wrong use of your mind.
Our ability to concentrate as well is reducing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Very hard.
I forgot what you said. Sorry.
I forgot.
Yeah, you're right. It is disappearing.
But I think sadly, as you get older, time seems very limited as well. It just goes like that. This morning, just coming over here, suddenly looked at the watch and went, I've got an hour.
But that's taking photos of things, don't you think? Actually, I think they'll do exactly the same thing, but I think that one thing it doesn't give you is the understanding of the thing that you were looking at. So you look at the picture and you think on the phone, I thought that was really interesting. Actually, I don't know now what thought I was having when I thought that was interesting. Whereas if I actually, and I don't draw a lot, if I actually write down, there's a juxtaposition of the fence with the shadow from the whatever, I've got a much greater understanding of what it is that I thought was the interesting thing about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The image isn't actually that interesting. It was something else that I was interested in, and I thought that I was collecting it in some way by taking the photograph of it, as we all do. But actually, I wasn't collecting the understanding. I was just collecting a very superficial aspect that if I didn't write it down, I haven't collectively, basically.
That's I think that's a great point, and something I've noticed is it's ineffective for me to gather images, but my beginnings of shows are lists of materials, feelings, surfaces, reflection, but descriptions like that.
Yeah,
and then I've internalized something versus having just grabbed.
Yeah.
So
because instead of just taking a picture of it, instead I wrote perspex with a piece of newspaper or something behind it, and the picture doesn't matter anymore because I know that's going to give me the idea again.
Or even the mood.
Yeah.
You're kind of capturing a sense of the mood of the work you want.
Yeah.
Which the photograph may not, it might be a different mood. But do you know what I mean? It's it alters.
Is that to do with the process that you actually, yes, you sit up, you can take a photo on your camera, but when you actually write it down, you absorb it more as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as my brain just went Andrea. I don't know, sorry. When Jane said that by writing it, you've now captured more. I just think it's about that thing that you've internalized, and then your hand is, something different there, isn't it? That resource, in terms of that resource, the image may be a bit poor.
Yeah, because it's the same as you go out painting, and actually you notice what colour the shadow is. You take a photograph of it, and the photograph on the phone is something completely different. And sometimes that photograph is actually a really great photograph, but it isn't what it was that you noticed.
Because you can't capture it, because actually peripheral vision and all the other senses that in that moment aren't tapped into that one little 4:3.
And actually, photography after you've made a piece of work can be really helpful. Sometimes it helps me to see the work in a new way. I look at it in the studio and I can't quite see it until I take a photograph of it. And then it seems to condense the image and edit it.
It's great at film cameras that you go and take 28 or 32 shots. That was really good.
Important to best
Actually, somebody lent me a Polaroid recently, a Polaroid camera, to take some shots for the show. And it's amazing how it really concentrates you on this shot. Because Polaroid film is really expensive. And there are only 8 shots on each thing for 15 quid. So you think really carefully about what we want to shoot there. Also, it's a beautiful piece of equipment that just the mechanically is amazing.
But on the other hand, I just did photography as a method, but actually it's a very interesting process for me because it's when I photograph things that I think of the next thing to do with it sometimes. So that photograph, as I said, a kind of record of something, is it's never, in a sense, the finished thing. It's as if, and that's why I said I need to write it down, because sometimes in seeing the photograph it might jump on over it, but most of the time it's, actually it's the shadow against, or it's that material against that I'm really interested in. And you look at the photograph and actually you kind of go, it's a fantastic photograph, but it's not telling you often the thing that you want it to tell you.
You've all brought up another interesting thing I was thinking about is that being limited in terms of possibly a Polaroid, being limited in terms of space. I think there's an absolutely obvious, if you look at a lot of artists' careers who suddenly get all the resources they want, there's a huge amount of the work becomes awful. So I don't think that more resources, in fact I would argue that probably in many cases, it could be over half of artists who finally get to do whatever they want. It's not a good thing for the practice. I look at someone like Mark Quinn, where you can now buy the Kate Moss in marble doing the yoga Kama Sutra pose and upgrade the gold plate version. You can go to White Cube and say, I want that Kate Moss, but can you another 50, 60,000 gold plate for marble sculpture? What is that? It just seems absolutely ludicrous and horrific. I've never been a massive fan of his work in particular. So there's, I guess, you even, it's interesting. I think one of the positive things about art production, so if you want to make films, that what people see in theaters. You need an immense amount. If you want to make an album even, that's easier, but you're going to need a group of people and, other media, and then if you try to deal with music distribution in that world, it's really tough. There's a beauty in art in that there is this thing about just a piece of paper and a pencil, and you can do whole shows. Tracy Emin forged a career on very basic drawings, which are great. I think there is something about that in the art world, and we all kind of smell it when it's gone a bit wrong, too much resource. It's just a thing you can tell.
There's a baseline though, isn't there? You think about the situation in art schools at the moment, the reduction of spaces, to the point where Central St Martin's is like a post-studio environment now. Because of that argument, that it's sort of weaponized into, well, you just need a pencil, or we're all on iPads now. And it reveals that there is a contradiction there, because there has to be a bottom line of where it does become problematic, that if you don't have the resource, that you think about in the 50s and 60s in Manhattan, that artists could live incredibly cheaply, raise families, and have enormous studios. And that's why you have Alex Katz was able to make giant, what would Alex Katz be making today? It's kind of, it's interesting to think about what that's doing. That this overlap with technology, economics, is it distorting our horizons? Are we? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I suppose it's actually open to anyone. I'm not quite sure what I think of it, because there's something great that you can just use pencil and paper. But then it becomes very aware, to me it's very aware, that idea of clutter in your studio, that your studio becomes more like a storage room, when actually you need a wall, you need a good space, don't you? Even if it's to make relatively small paintings, having that sense of space and permission to think, well, I could do a really big one if I wanted to. I feel like it does something to you, and so whilst it is good to feel the pinch and sometimes be really creative with what you have got, I'm just wondering where that moment is, when do you recognise that moment, that actually, you know what, I need a big wall, I need a big, somewhere to make art.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I think there's a big difference between feeling a pinch and being suffocated out, and I feel like right now, I watched it with our education at Chelsea, where it went from having, just the tiniest space to a smaller space to a smaller space to nothing. And that whole, it just seemed like it wasn't a very honest dialogue about how much you actually need space and resources, or you not being able to have access to the workshops, things like that. I mean, the reality is they're taking on, these places were designed to educate X amount of people, and they're just taking on so many more. And to say that you don't really need space to be creative, go ahead, figure your way around this problem, that's not really an honest conversation in my mind. That's just, you're making an excuse for the fact that you've taken too many students because...
And I agree with you,
financial
reasons.
reasons.
Actually, if you don't have, I don't say that you should have unlimited resources at college, but as a student, you should be able to kind of explore different avenues that you want to explore. And if you end up doing something because of a real lack of resources, I think that's quite sad. You can't do it there, where are you going to do it?
Like we have a friend who's doing her PhD, and then all of a sudden, halfway through, she was told, oh, well, the PhD students actually can't use the workshops. And she's a sculptor. That was a practice-based PhD. And so the workshops are for the BAs and the MAs. So the PhD students can now use them 1 day a week, every 2 weeks on a Friday. And she had an infant, and she was trying to organize her whole life and her schedule on making sure that she could have childcare on that one particular day. I mean, that's changing the rules of the game halfway through your PhD. That's ridiculous. You can't take someone on a practice-based PhD then if you're going to do that to them. But, things like that, that's not helping her practice. That's not putting an obstacle that's constructive or that you can build a workaround.
Yeah, so that's the opposite argument from what Ian was saying when he said if you have unlimited resources, you're suddenly kind of, okay, I can do whatever I want. What is it that I want to do? I actually have never been in this position before, so I think that's just as frightening.
Yeah. Exactly.
So one of the things that we've done in the residency is we've done a workshop day where we work with limited resources, which is really how this whole discussion started. And then it was having done the first edition, we realised that the space wasn't necessarily, there was quite a nice space on the very first residency that wasn't actually actively being used because the artists that were engaged with it weren't engaged with it, if that makes sense, and just realised actually what resulting work they could produce was available to do. So we decided that we would come up with this workshop where what we've done is we've provided limited resources. So we would come in with a roll of lining paper, some pencils, some scissors, and we would work through different aspects because a lot of the artists go, well, I don't know how to work in this space. And that would break the ice. We'd actually activate the space by the end of it. I mean, Jamie's on all of these people have been on the residency, and I think it's been a really, really valuable way of
I
looking.
actually found that really beneficial because it's like me got into actually an office with literally some pieces of paper and coloured pencils and gone almost back to scratch of, you know, being at school, going, what can I do with this stuff?
It was really liberating.
Yeah.
And interesting as well, I think.
Because we did timed workshops as well, so that you'd be able to work on your own, you'd be able to work collaboratively, you'd work in silence, you'd work with music, and then, you know, it'd be like a free-for-all, and then we'd create an exhibition in the afternoon and let the residents just curate this exhibition, and then we do a crit, and it was really valuable.
I think we haven't talked much about collaboration actually, but I think that's one of the most valuable resources that all of us have.
Yes.
Our ability to recognise someone else who might have similar ideas or a similar approach or something about their practice that we could or would engage with that would kind of widen our own practice. And I think for all the limited resources that there are at the colleges, and they're getting more and more limited, I think one resource that they can't take away from you is that peer network.
Yes, which is really important.
I've had an interesting experience recently. I organized residencies for American artists to come over here, and then residencies for them to take up in San Francisco and New York. And the ones that come over here, there's been 5 of them now, and it's been fascinating. They're so much more engaged with each other and with their studio visits than I find artists here in the UK are. So they would call each other out of the blue, like call Ian, don't know him, hey Ian, my name's Rebecca, I'd love to do a studio visit, can I come by? And you'd be like, yeah, sure. And they're all connecting with each other that way, and it leads to collaborative projects a lot of the time. But they were also just saying, yeah, we're in and out of each other's spaces all the time. People would think nothing of getting a call or an email or whatever saying, can I come over and see your work? Yeah, sure, come tomorrow, we'll grab a few beers and we'll sit and talk. And they're doing this all the time, this giant wash bucket of artists, which I think is wonderful. And I think it's inspired me. I'm determined to start doing that myself here. People think I'm crazy. But again, kind of like what we said earlier, you'd be surprised what you ask and people will say, yeah, sure. Because I do think that it's the network of people are really, really helpful, and it's much harder to keep that up as you get further along in your career.
Actually, Instagram is bringing that for me. I mean, the number of times I've DM'd someone who I actually don't know. They don't always respond.
Yeah.
But very often they do.
Yeah.
And that's great. You don't actually need their address. You just,
Yeah, and I think you're correct to point out, it's not just collaborations, but the curators, the writers, all of those are a resource that I certainly didn't work as much as I should have in terms of keeping those relationships going, keeping those conversations. That resource is immense. So that professional resource around you, by calling those people and contacting those people. So if you don't have the studio space which you have a show on, my God, the work has only just begun when the show goes up. You need to get even more people through and more people to see it and that kind of thing. So it's quite, there's resources that we forget about that aren't just space, material, time I did write down a few little provocations, just things, some of them are kind of silly, about things I've noticed over the years, which you may or may not have a view on. But I noticed myself when I was younger, particularly, I would wish some of these things. I just thought maybe we could discuss some of them or whatever. But like the classic one, if I had loads of these X things in a room, it would be a great artwork, but I can't really do it because I only have one. You know, this classic art trope of if I could just fill the room with those things. And that's one of those funny ones. I don't know if you guys have ever tried that. I tried it as a student, you know. So we tend to have that thing around volume always being better.
I come from a graphic design background as well, which actually it's the KISS principle, isn't it? Which is keeping it simple and stupid. So actually the unfilled spaces is as important as the filled space.
Yeah, and negative space.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying, yeah. My deadlines are always too tight, I need more time. I mean, I think that one is... Does that never help anybody to have more time?
No, deadlines are amazing,
Deadlines,
yeah, they're great.
I love deadlines.
Too much time is important.
It doesn't help, does it?
No.
So I think one thing I hear from a lot of artist friends, and you know, end up wishing that the deadlines weren't arriving or didn't have those deadlines, but I think they are a resource. I think they are something that's actually really valuable.
But they can be negative as well, because I think sometimes you worry too much about the deadline and instead think, I've got to finish something by then. And actually the thing that you're finishing might have developed in a different way if you'd stopped thinking about the deadline so much. And it was actually one of the really amazing differences between being in art college and being a fashion designer, where everything is, you work back from a deadline that's 6 months away, and you have to commit to doing certain things that will happen by the end of that 6 months. And actually one of the most liberating things for me was taking the advice of someone who said, stop worrying about 6 months, in fact stop even worrying about 6 weeks. Just worry about what you're going to do maybe in the next 6 days. Do something one day, see what happens, and then do something else to it the next day. Just keep working like that, and something will come out of it that you will be happy to show in 6 weeks or whenever it is. Instead of planning and saying, I am going to make this within that deadline, maybe give yourself a bit more freedom, because what you make may not be perfectly finished. But it might actually be a better thing if you didn't think about the deadline. I agree that we all have to have goals, but I think sometimes the deadline can be slightly inhibiting the other, you know, it's the other kind of...
Yeah, I don't think you can ever say, by this point I'll have X works, like you wouldn't know what pains you're going to have at the end. None of us would know, but it's how you manage that and the eventuality that you will do something in that time. I think
I
is great.
remember reading a really interesting cure for writer's block, and they advised to book a 5-star hotel room.
Nice.
Stay
So add financial pressure. That's great.
book a 5-star hotel room and nothing else, and just go there, and you realise you've got to come up with something within like 3 days in this 5-star hotel. And I thought that's actually good, because it's sort of the deadline's there, but it's interesting. It's a way of sort of giving you that pressure.
3 days in a 5-star hotel.
I had a friend who wrote his thesis. He was English and Danish, and he wrote his thesis on the ferry. He did back and forth 2 times from Denmark to England, and just sat in the ferry writing. And that was he was writing about the liminality of his location, background and identity. Anyway, but it was he kind of isolated into a different space.
And that's really useful, isn't it? I mean, that sort of pressure. I find it with space. I mean, at Florence Trust, we did the residency at Florence Trust, and I had a huge wall there, but I knew I wanted to make something even bigger, so it had ended up making something in 4 blocks and sort of putting it together. It was almost like I had to push beyond the boundary of the space, so it doesn't really matter how big the wall is, it's always going to be bigger than the wall. And you're just going to have to stick it together afterwards, and then see what it looks like. There was something about not knowing as well, so not being able to see the whole picture that is important in the work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And there's something kind of scary, fun, risky about that.
Yeah.
So painting the last piece, yeah, I'd have to do like an assembly line. I could paint 3 sheets that were 4.5 meters high. Then I'd take 2 down, move that one over, put up 2 more. And so I was painting for weeks, never knowing what it was all going to look like when it was together. And that was really fun. I mean, fun / nauseating.
But sometimes ideas just spring, or often ideas just spring and they snowball, don't they?
Yeah, the way I was painting was changing, so then I thought, oh shit, what's it going to look like when that first panel that I painted a few weeks ago is actually going to be seen with all the rest of them. But
So I'm quite interested to see who out of us, if any of us, ever write anything down saying, well, I must do it this way again. 'Cause when I do a series of work, I start off thinking, yeah, okay. And by the end of it, I think, I'm going to start off like that.
Yeah.
Why have I made it so hard for myself?
You like it. Yeah, you're right. That's the 5th one, whatever you're doing, you often are much better and you do it in a way. It's a funny thing. And there's no, I think one of the funny things about art making as well is this, it's not the kind of thing you get insanely good at and then repeat. I mean, some people do. But there's that constant pressure. You're never quite an expert at it, are you? You're always having to kind of push beyond. So
Because otherwise it's boring.
yeah, it's amazing. So I'm going to give Jason Rhodes, is it Jason Martin? Listen, just research.
yeah.
He's basically been swirling the black paint, the little thing for Jason Martin.
Jason Martin, yeah.
It's not alone.
Yeah. But I always think of him and go, he just takes black paint and goes like that.
Did you see
It's
the
the
massive
massive
corner
cornices.
sculpture?
I was in
It
college.
was his last show. The show before last at this. There was this huge sculpture of cork in the middle of the front gallery.
Yeah.
Completely different from what you
Okay. So he did something new.
Yeah, he did. I mean, yeah, I like this one, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I have no problem, but it's just amazing how many of you made.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Um,
Talk about keeping your attention or something
Tell me
like that.
about
How could you not? Yeah.
I think the other one, do you think the other one I thought of was that people ask a lot is, I won't ever get taken seriously without a proper studio.
What is a studio?
Well,
I
I
think
guess.
that's true.
I guess if people want to come and see your work and you don't have, I mean, you kind of, depending on your practice, I mean, someone like me, I need a studio. I suppose if I were doing video and film, maybe arguably get rid of a kitchen table.
Yeah.
But then again, you still need to be able to show someone what you're working on.
There are ways around that, aren't there? Increasingly, it's not just being out of London, worry about not being in London. There are opportunities to come and just use a good studio space.
Yeah.
I know people that do that, just pop in, show the work in the studio, and then pop off again to the studio.
But also the residencies are a good way of sort of consolidating things as well. But for me, I have a studio in my house at home, but I couldn't switch off. So now I belong as part of the couple. And actually for me, now that conversation, that peer network, is so enriching. You can feel that creative energy. And so you want to go there. I don't take the technology, or I take very limited technology because I think I'm paying for this now. So
I think that's an important thing about it actually. I don't think it's so much that no one will take me seriously if I haven't got a studio. I think it actually becomes part of the kind of go, as in I've got this studio, how can I use this studio as a resource? And like Andrea said, it's the people that you might meet there, which you do, even if the space isn't huge or you're automatically part of the community or whatever. So I'm not sure that idea of being taken seriously is as much part of the issue as I want to network with more people, and that's a good way to do it, basically, as well as having somewhere that actually, because of the monetary commitment, forces me to do some work, rather than working from home where it is enormously easy to get distracted by
Yeah.
domestic stuff or going and making the tea and having a biscuit or something like that.
I think it's not just about will other people take me seriously, it's do I take myself seriously? I mean, I have a small studio and I'm finding it very difficult personally to actually, do stuff in it. So, Jane and I go to the studio just like there, and I'm hoping that the discipline of kind of going somewhere and also getting into that sort of. I mean, that people are different. I think individuals are different, and I think it sort of depends on temperament as well. I'm not so good at doing the network in a virtual sense, but I think I'm better at if I'm in a physical environment and there are people around. I find that easier. So that will sort of work. But I think there's ways. There's always ways if you don't have the wherewithal to run a studio, whatever.
And I think it's also accepting that there's some days you go in and you think, yeah, and then you go, it's just not working today.
The best thing that someone ever said to me, one of the best bits of advice was Una Grimes, and she said, if you go into the studio and you're just making a cup of tea, or you read something, or you putter about, you move your stuff around, that's a great day, Rebecca. That's a productive day. And I thought, oh, she's right. Sometimes those are the best, most productive days. They don't feel like it on the day necessarily.
Well, sometimes it's when you have an idea, isn't it? Seriously, sometimes if I'm feeling stuck or whatever, I unroll a massive piece of white paper and put a spotlight or something on and start playing with objects on it, just to kind of, give me an idea or...
Yeah, I love that word play. That's one of the words that Sandy Barrel was one of the tutors down at West Coast.
I don't think everything is planned. So I think this whole idea that you have to have a studio to plan your work, or I think the planning part of your work can almost happen anywhere.
But surely if everything is planned, it doesn't always go to plan anyway.
No, I don't believe in it. It absolutely doesn't.
Always have a plan B, maybe plan D and E.
And the studio can become a trap as well. I mean, I love the one work at home for me has been the kind of administration area, but I have to go to another space to kind of fall into that other area and treat it like a kind of work. There's a lunch break, I come back. There's an appointment at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I'm done. Mostly because the tools you don't really want to operate if you're tired. That wasn't the case if I'm very busy. I mean, I'll be in at 5 in the morning, I'll go stay till midnight and teach or whatever in between. But I do, and you guys touched on it earlier, I think one of the things we're facing as artists is an institutional, whether that's art schools or that's studio space. There is a cultural agenda to devalue the artist as a maker, as physical, haptic, material pusher around her. And ironically, the kids, certainly the younger kids coming into art schools now, that's what they want. They think they're coming to make stuff and do ceramics and do wood. And they're being increasingly, certainly at the UAL, but it's happening at all the institutions in England, which is really a post-government removing funding issue. The pressure on all levels to remove the artist as a speculative maker in some type of space is on. That game is, the pressure is massive. And yet, the museums and the galleries would run a business overnight if we didn't make things to shove in their spaces. And they're doing absolutely zero to support it. They're not supporting the artists as makers. And I don't know if you guys have noticed the fall, the statistical, and it's a fact, decreasing institutional funding of making of art, but they'll pay to ship it, administrate it, and curate it, and do everything else. But they will only pay a tiny amount to make it. It's crazy. So we are fighting I think there's a very serious underlying message. We might talk about limited resources within being a good thing to some degree, but I do think if you have a room this big and you only make A4 drawings, this room might need to be that big to do that. You might need that psychological space just to have that area. And if you press that person into that little corner, yeah, they can make the work, but does it operate the same way? And I think that's the sort of psychological side of it. And I think that knowing that you could go and build a sculpture over here tomorrow is huge. The potential energy as a resource of a space and an environment is not to be underestimated, and that's something I've noticed. Like, I always kind of have an area in my studio that's relatively free of stuff, so I have space to expand into. And the work is kind of sculptural at times. So that's something I think is really, I'm deeply annoyed at the state of things.
Museums and galleries, just as I used to work at 3&A, and you know, they are the residence programme. You know, so they do support making to some extent. But one of the interesting things with the residency programme there was that we had sort of slightly unevenly sized studios because of the, you know, so the building, and one was absolutely massive. And inevitably, whoever got the massive studio was just like, this is amazing! Because someone had this space. And so many, you know, people who, we were often dealing with like mid-career artists, but so many of them were like, I've never had this much space. And it was a room that was probably maybe twice as big as this. So it was really, you know, maybe one. It was a, you know, nice big square space, and they were all like, whoa!
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are availabilities and there are resources given out by museums particularly. I think it's still a small fraction of what could be given into
well, what's interesting is actually the history of museums and galleries in this country was very often connected to an art school, and that's been separated. So, you know, the South Kensington model, it was the South Kensington model, and all over the place you see the remnants of it, you know, Brighton, wherever, it's like museum, library, art school, all one thing, and then they've all been separated, and I think it's kind of a great shame, really, in some ways, but things change.
We're going back to the kind of thing, we're going back to the argument about the space. Like, you getting a residency is one of the most valuable things that you can get, because whether or not you use all the space, it just gives you a different environment to work in, so that your kind of head goes differently to the way your ideas go differently to the way they would normally do wherever you work. And from that point of view, I think, you know, residencies are a really important resource.
Well, that's the one thing about the one that I've been running, is that it's kind of, I say right at the start, it's about resource gathering and research. It's not about, right, you've got this amount of time, and at the end of it, let's have something really finished. This is the result of over 12 months' work.
But I mean, actually, I went into the studio. I'll call it studio for want of a better word. I came up the room in the Woodward residency at Canary Wharf several times last year, which was admittedly over a long period than this year. And I was some days the only one working there, and other days there might have been two of us or something, where in fact should have been 16, I think, 16.
Yeah.
But it was, oh my God, I'm here on my own. What shall I do? You know, and I obviously had to sort of semi-clear up at the end of the day or whatever. But it was an amazing, kind of liberating experience, as well as being an amazingly limited resource because of what we could do there. It was, in terms of space, a really massive resource because it was bigger than this room. But then actually, you just have whole Canary Wharf. I think I was very externally focused, and I focused on this and stuff. But it was, you know, it was like the whole thing. It's like wherever I had the photography permit, it was fine, and beyond, you know. It was like,
And then that's thinking outside the box, and that's responding environmentally, whereas, you know, it's not a prescriptive thing that you come in and you have to do this, you have to stick to your normal practice, whatever your normal practice is. But then from there, hopefully, it challenges you to think slightly differently, think outside the box, which is, I think, one thing as artists we're very adept at doing.
There is something about that change of space, isn't it? That
Yes.
and finding yourself in a new
It's that-
environment that just triggers.
It's that whole, sometimes change is as good as rest. So losing your luggage on holiday.
I was thinking that the Florence Trust, I made a web starter at Florence Trust, which is an outside interest. And I thought of it then I started to think about Harvest Festival, and I was working with thoughts around food and how we grow food. So just being in that space in that amazing church and thinking about the history of the place, I wanted to somehow incorporate the atmosphere into my work. So I used the natural yeast in the air to make this bread sponge, and then made bread from it as well. I went through everybody's faces to try and incorporate air, their breath.
Into it off.
But it's still going. It just made me think about trying to continue using history, but think about afterwards as well and how this carries on. So I keep feeding the starter, and other people in the group have got the starter now. So anyone can have something to make a product of bread.
So I think that's probably just about covered the variety. I think we touched on a lot of really interesting things, from basically how we treat the resource of our ideas and what ways that gets sort of stored as some bank of ideas, and other things around the limited resource being a real key to opening up a certain sense of freedom and brevity or levity around what you're able to do, and just remembering that. But also I think as artists we're even more global now. I think the days of the Frank Hour box and that kind of hermiting away in a little room and just scratching away at the paint. I can't stand his work, but I just want to make it stop. I just want to say, Frank, you could have stopped in the first week, and you've been working on it for 5 years. Oh my God, get over it, paint it out the door. So I think there is a kind of thing around becoming a social artist and operating within those spaces, and newness of place can be very exciting. But there is something about having that potential room, that area. I think it's about the idea of having this open workshop, this sort of thing where things could just happen.
Yeah.
And that area of potentiality, the resource of something sitting there, may not happen. You might move your tea around for a week, but it's having that thing there and knowing is hugely freeing up with your mind. So I think, figuring out how to do that, making your own. So thanks for coming. I think it's been really quite interesting to hear everyone's different viewpoints. Thanks.
Thank you.